How's it going? Got Mike Quast here. Welcome back to the Bobby Dizzle podcast, everybody. Thanks for watching. So we got a couple people online already. Just a reminder before we get cracking, all the links to like, comment, and subscribe. I say like, comment, and subscribe. All the links to follow and listen are in the description and at bobbydizzle.com. I'm currently building my homepage, so it's going to look pretty good here pretty soon. It's going to be my landing page. I'm going to stop giving out YouTube links. I can't wait for that day. And on the horn, we have Mike Quast from Minnesota. Are you from Minnesota, Mike?
Yeah, Moorhead,
Okay.
Minnesota.
Mike from Minnesota. sounds like a local post high school football program. We got Mike from Minnesota online, but Mike is the author of Sasquatch Central, High Strangeness at Northern Minnesota Homestead. He is the author of the book about our favorite Bigfoot guest, Randy Bauer, that we had on a couple months ago. I couldn't be more excited, and he's generous enough to join us. Works kind of an odd schedule, but at least he's working, so that's something to be said in and of itself. Mike, how are you doing today? How's it going?
Pretty good.
Had a good Thanksgiving we talked about. So
Yeah.
You said you've got this book, and how many other books did you have? I know we discussed it a little bit.
3 others. Doug Hychek out of the Twin Cities paid to have all of my formerly self-published books professionally published. So I have 4 of them available on Amazon now.
Man, Doug Hychek sounds just like a saint. A lot of people say he's a good guy.
Yeah, he is.
I talk to. I don't know if you deal with Long Island Bigfoot. He talks about Doug Hychek a lot. Talk real highly of him. And so you did research on Randy's property. What was the first experience? I'm going to think about where I want to go. What's the first experience you had out there with him that let you know it was something special?
I first heard about his place from a Bigfoot researcher down in the cities named Brent Herring in November of 2019. Although stuff had been going on since 2013 and I'd never really heard about it. He said, hey, this is not too far from you. You might want to check it out, even though it's about a 3-hour drive from me. But so I just got a hold of Randy and asked if I could come up, and he was more than willing. He likes to have people visit the place, and so I first met him in the next month, December of 2019, and I remember it was a really nice winter day. It was like 30 degrees on my first visit there, and he took me all around the property, and he showed me all kinds of stick structures that day that he had found. All these, there's a lot of teepees and what looked like letters of the alphabet, like the letter X or a capital A. Not that I think that means that Bigfoot understands our alphabet. I think those are just simple shapes that happen to look like those letters, but there were just tons of those all over the property. And that was also the first time that I ever heard a wood knock that day. I've been a Bigfoot researcher for over 30 years, and I'd heard, from Finding Bigfoot and shows like that, where researchers will do wood knocking and sometimes they get answers and they think that's how Bigfoot communicates with each other. But I had tried that. I had tried wood knocking several times over the years and never gotten an answer, and I never heard a wood knock before my first visit to Randy's place, and that was the first time I heard one. And I've heard that like a half a dozen times now at his place.
Cool. Was that something that, like, when you first walk into the woods that you heard, or was it once you got deeper in? I've heard it was like a warning sign. We
were pretty deep in by the time that we heard that. It was just a single knock, and Randy was like in mid-sentence about something, and we suddenly heard that, and he said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "Yes, I did."
So I take it was kind of nice and loud. Pow!
Yeah, well, not super loud, but fairly close, though.
So that would be more eerie, the close. How close you think? I said that would be more eerie if it was close like that.
I'd say it was within a few hundred feet of us.
Ooh. That's what always worries me about the wood knocking is maybe people hear like a snag falling from a tree. But yeah, you'd know if it was something like that.
Yeah, no, this was definitely a deliberate, really sharp sound.
See, that right there would be enough for me. I'm out, but I tell myself that Randy's told me about the tree stands, and in my mind, if I ever go, I'm going to sit in one of the tree stands all night. I'm just going to take bologna sandwiches and some water. And I'm going to sit there with the flashlight, no gun, maybe a knife. I don't know. I'm not really scared of them, to be honest, but I don't know how I would act in the moment.
Well, I think if you're out there looking for something, if the prospect of actually finding it scares you, you shouldn't be looking for it. I mean, you have to be willing.
I don't know if it's a scare thing feeling. That it's like a, like when you're about to get a shot, like it's not a big deal, but still the thought of it, you're like, oh, here it comes.
It's like riding a roller coaster, maybe. You're kind of.
By the way, Mike, Wild Trees has joined us. Wild Trees, Mike Wild Trees.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah, hi.
Nice to meet you. Sorry.
I think you probably saw him if you watched the Randy interview. It's him. Yeah, he's a busy man. The world does not wait for Wild Trees. Wild Trees wait. He was just telling us about his first experience up there.
Yeah.
That was just the first one, right, Mike? Up at Randy's. How many times have you been up there, do you think?
I've lost track of how many times now. It's been like 2.5 years of going up there, well over a dozen times.
Really?
Interesting. Now, I wonder, Mike, did you ever, I'm sure, well, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, so let me just ask you, have you ever entertained the idea that Randy's mistaken about the Bigfoot? Even once, have you ever entertained that idea? And if you did, what did you think were likely possible explanations for what he was experiencing?
He's seen them with his own eyes, so it's hard to say he's mistaken once he's had broad daylight sightings like he has.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't think there's any chance that he's hoaxing.
No,
because there've been things that have happened that have had multiple witnesses while Randy was standing right there with them.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not out there doing these things. If it was a hoax, I mean, he'd have to have actors working for him that are out there in costumes and running around. And I mean, some people that come there carry guns, so they'd be risking getting shot. And I don't know what the payoff would be for hoaxing something like this. He's not making any money off of it.
And not to mention possible trespassers and poachers on his land.
His place is, it's along a major highway, but yet it's pretty isolated too. I mean, if somebody was out there trespassing, they'd have to get dropped off, and then they'd be stuck there, and until they had a ride come and pick them up again.
Yeah, I think that may be the most unnerving part about Randy's story is that you can tell the guy's not messing with anyone. He's not like he's real salt of the earth guy, and like. And it's happening.
He's not the only one who's had sightings either. There's tons of witnesses there. I think I tallied this up. The total number of sightings, I think it was 19 sightings by 18 different witnesses since 2014.
What was the most intense sighting of those that you remember that you've collected? Would you say?
I guess it depends what you mean by intense. Some have been really close up. In May of 2020, he had a group camp out there where a group called the SRA, the Sasquatch Research Association, was visiting. And one of the members of that group, Andy Pieper, was out walking with his son and a friend of theirs at night. 30, 40 feet in front of them. And there's been a couple of sightings from that close of a distance.
Okay.
You broke up when you said the distance, Mike. Sorry.
Well, there's been a couple of sightings that have been from that close of a distance, about 30 or 40 feet from the witnesses.
Okay. Yeah.
And
it broke up when you said that distance. Okay, I got you now. 30 or 40 feet. Carry on.
Okay. And one of Randy's sightings, one of his daylight sightings along his power line corridor, he had two of his granddaughters with him, and one of the granddaughters saw it too. And this was like over 100 yards distance, but to have a backup witness like that, was pretty impressive. And when I met the granddaughter, I realized I had never met a little kid Bigfoot witness before. So that was kind of a neat experience talking to her.
Because they have zero bias.
Yeah. And when he had his first sighting along the power line corridor, he said he took his eyes off of the creature for just a few seconds, and then when he looked up again, it was gone. And so when he saw the second one with his granddaughter next to him, he said, "Okay, I'm not gonna take my eyes off of it this time." But then the grandkids were behind him, and so that was his first thought. But his second thought was for the safety of the kids, and he wanted to make sure where they were at. So he did turn around to make sure where they were, and saw that the older granddaughter was right behind him, and she was staring straight ahead with her mouth hanging open because she was looking right at the creature. And then by the time he looked towards it again, it had walked away and it was gone. But the granddaughter saw it walk away. So that was a pretty dramatic sighting.
Definitely.
Was that the one where he said that his granddaughter said, "Grandpa, I saw a monkey or gorilla jump the fence"? She
said something like, "Grandpa, I saw a big black hairy giant walk into the woods."
Yeah, that's what it was. That's intense, man. Randy's story. I bet I've listened to that episode 2 or 3 times. It just gets better. And he was supposed to meet me this weekend in Nashville, but I flaked out and literally just remembered it. He's bouncing. He's going down like to Florida or something. I think he said.
I'm not sure. He goes all over the country.
Touring with Carrie Underwood.
Mike, do you think now that you've written the book and you've spent, I'm sure you've done a lot of extensive research on other cases and you've been to his property, and I understand this answer might change, but as of today, what is your best explanation for the phenomenon? Is it just a physical animal, or is it something stranger than that they're experiencing?
For most of my history in the Bigfoot field, I was coming at it from the flesh and blood angle. I wanted to believe it was just a flesh and blood animal that is out there and is more intelligent and more elusive than most animals and harder to find. But meanwhile, I would hear these paranormal type stories once in a while, and I tried to just rationalize them and dismiss them somehow, because I had never experienced anything like that for myself. And my end goal is to try and help prove that these things exist. And if you believe that what you're looking for is paranormal or supernatural, that makes that so much harder. And I think there's a natural tendency to not want to believe it. But since I've been visiting Randy's place, there is so much weirdness going on there, and I've experienced some of it for myself. I'm starting to say that I'm at least having to be on the fence and admit that there's a possibility that there is something paranormal to these things, or at least that there is something paranormal out in the woods that they interact with and are able to tap into, and like some kind of energy that they're able to interact with and use for themselves. Like there have been things like, one of the first things that Randy encountered was a line of 18-inch footprints in snow that entered a clearing and just stopped in the middle of a snowfield, like whatever was making them had just disappeared into thin air.
Right.
And in his most recent sighting, which was about a year ago, it was on Halloween of 2021. It was in his power line corridor. He says this time he told himself again, "Do not take your eyes off of it." And as he was looking right at it, he says it did just vanish into thin air right in front of his eyes. So if you believe that, I mean, what else can you conclude that there's something paranormal going on?
Interesting.
I totally agree with you there. When I first started becoming, I won't say obsessed, but it's been one of my favorite subjects for going on 30 years now. Ever since I became a teenager and started just reading books and watching documentaries and whatnot. And I wanted to stick with the flesh and blood, but I think the paranormal aspect adds some kind of optimism to it. Like you're not finding, there's zero evidence of them being flesh and blood. You get into paranormal, there's a possibility there. I mean, you got to really expand your horizons a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But paranormal offers a reason for them to exist, and at the same time, we think they don't exist. I mean, I just feel like that makes me more optimistic about the subject once that entered the realm.
I was going to say, as a biologist, okay. First, what is my definition of the paranormal supernatural? What I think it is, my own personal definition, is simply aspects of the world that we do not fully understand yet. And in that regards, there has always been paranormal, and there will always be paranormal, because I don't think humans will ever fully understand every aspect of the world. Um, so that being said, that's what my definition is. Now, I think there's a possibility that the Bigfoot that Randy is experiencing are flesh and blood animals. However, they're still paranormal because they have things we don't understand. But that disappearing, the portals, I know it sounds extreme, but those just might be adaptations. They might just be, evolutionary adaptations that we don't understand yet. For example, some animals do have weird adaptations. I mean, the electric eel can generate tremendous amounts of electricity with its body. That's not a lot of people can do that, or animals. There are certain animals that can, in a single sex environment, they could become pregnant and give birth without a male. I mean, that sounds extraordinary, but it is true. So I wonder sometimes if they are flesh and blood, because the stories have been here for a long time. It's just that their body is a technology. The body is what's allowing them, because there is evidence that there is a scientific evidence in scientific literature that shows that humans and animals have all humans and animals have the capability to have psychic abilities and to affect physical reality with just their mind. That evidence is out there in a peer-reviewed journal. So could it be these animals just have a better brain, or they have better techniques and they've truly mastered the way to use their mind to interact with physical reality? I'm still open to that possibility. I think that might be something there.
Even Randy says he knows they're flesh and blood when they're here.
When they're here, yeah.
Yeah. They obviously live flesh and blood type lives. I mean, he finds hair snagged on the power poles in his power line corridor, like they're scratching their backs. So, and he puts out all that peanut butter as bait, and they take it and they eat it. So they eat and drink and presumably sleep, and they itch and scratch, and they do all the other things that flesh and blood animals do. And there were some little 6-inch tracks found on the property that seem to show that there might be a baby one there. So apparently they reproduce like normal animals. So they do all the things that flesh and blood creatures do, but there seems to be this extra aspect to them where they can do things like, as weird as it sounds, like teleport or just from place to place, disappear into thin air and stuff like that. So I don't pretend to understand it. I think the witnesses that I've talked to are credible, and all I can do is go with what they say they've observed.
It seems like it seems like the portal in the like Randy says, the disappearing tracks. Seems like that's consistent across the board with a lot of sightings, even the ones even the small amount we've encountered or interviewed.
Yeah. The other thing, the 2 points I wanted to make that are interesting are, me and Bobby have talked about this, but I don't know who made the observation, but we made the observation that there are certain things that these creatures are not okay sharing, and there are certain things that they don't seem to mind sharing. So they do seem to mind sharing a physical photograph. They don't want to share themselves in front of a camera or a video camera. That's like off. They don't want that. But it's curious. They don't seem to mind their footprints being left. We can make casts of them. And then the hair as well. They also don't seem to mind the hair. It's not like they're fastidious about it, like, I don't know if that's them being sloppy or something, but it does seem like the most physical evidence we have are their footprints in their hair. And that's pretty strong evidence. But I wonder, why do they not care about that? Why do they care about some things and not other things?
Yeah, that's a good question. And as far as photographs go, there aren't any super clear ones of them from there, but there are several where you can kind of see what looks like part of them, like they're trying to stay below the frame, but like the very top of their head will be sticking up at the bottom of the picture, or there's one picture of what looks like a hand sticking up from down below, and if you zoom in on it, you can see the fingers and everything. It looks kind of like a chimpanzee hand.
Ooh.
So it seems like they understand what cameras are, and they're trying to stay out of frame as best they can. But yeah, it's a good point about why they leave hair in places that are so easy to find and stuff like that.
I'm sorry, Bobby. Did you want to say something?
No, it was just with the pictures. Like you remember Randy saying that they even got into his phone and changed the metadata. Like took pictures out of his phone that had already been taken.
Yeah,
that's
interesting.
That's woo woo to me. That's crazy.
Okay, so
yeah,
here's
there's been other kinds of effects on electronic devices there too. Like fully charged phones will just suddenly drain down to zero, and
yeah, that's part of that skinwalker stuff we were talking about earlier. That happens out there as well.
Yeah, I had it happen with a camera there too that I had bought just special to bring to his place, and
I have I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, my camera just stopped working on me like it was fried.
Right.
It's insane.
Yeah, and that's common with crop circles, being close to a UFO, the electronics, the batteries being drained, even like ghost activity. That seems to be a common thing. The batteries being drained. I talked to somebody who said that, like, for instance, for ghosts or spirits, if you're at a haunted place, they were saying that they use that energy to manifest themselves. So then I was like, okay, so if I want a ghost to manifest itself, should I bring a bunch of batteries? I'm talking like heavy batteries, with a lot of power, so they could use that power. They said yes. They said they thought that would work. I think that was Robert Goodrow who said that. The other point I was going to make is just a hypothesis I thought of, or a possible explanation. I just thought about it right now. It's kind of far out there, but putting different pieces together. Okay, what if Bigfoot is a flesh and blood creature? And it's been here for a long time. I mean, we have fossil evidence of other humans that match the profile of Bigfoot that used to live with us a few million years ago. So what if they're just flesh and blood animals, inhabitants of Earth? But here's where it gets weird. Okay, the idea is out there that in order for this to work, you have to believe in extraterrestrials or UFOs. But there's evidence out there that extraterrestrials have left technology for humans, like Crash the Craft or whatever, and that we've exploited that technology. Furthermore, there's evidence that we have a pretty good understanding of what the UFO occupants, what their worldview is and what they think we should be doing. For instance, they believe we should not have nuclear weapons because they turn off nuclear weapons. They go to nuclear power plants. They also believe that we should take care of the planet because sometimes they'll communicate that, directly in people's minds, like some children in Zimbabwe. So they're very pro-environment, anti overuse of technology, anti-nuclear weapons. Okay, now if I think about Bigfoot is also for those things. I mean, Bigfoot does not have any nuclear weapons as far as I'm concerned. They do seem to value the natural environment and to live in it and live harmoniously. Now, what if they're intelligent enough that these extraterrestrials said, hey, they started a dialogue with them. They're like, you're an intelligent creature on this planet. You're already doing what we think you should be doing. Let's give you a leg up. Let's gift you. I'm an alien. Let me gift you Bigfoot portal technology. Let me gift you invisibility technology because we know you're responsible and we want you to succeed. That's basically my hypothesis. I wonder if there's some kind of alliance because in the background, they seem to have similar morals and similar ethics. Yeah.
And similar technology as far as the portals go.
Say that again?
And similar technology.
Yeah, similar technology. Exactly. Similar technology. Yeah.
I suppose it's possible, although UFOs are one thing that really isn't showing up at Randy's place. And
yeah.
I've heard of other paranormal type Bigfoot cases where they've been claimed to be extraterrestrial and people have attracted all kinds of followers and almost made a cult following out of it, and have all kinds of people come to their property and camp out, and the owner almost start to be like a cult leader and start to claim that Bigfoot is giving him messages from their extraterrestrial overlords, and Randy's nothing like that is going on at Randy's place. He's not trying to form a religion out of it or anything like that, or telling people that he has any kind of great message to deliver.
Right. No, I from talking to Randy, I just feel like he's just excited about what's happening.
Oh
and
yeah.
he wants somebody to talk to about it, and he wants
Yeah.
I sure wish he was closer. I'd hang out there every couple of weeks.
Mm. We should start planning that trip, though, Bobby. I mean, maybe it'll be a year from now, but who cares?
So far.
We should start
It's
already.
It's on the other side of the planet.
Not really. I mean, how
So
much is
far away.
a plane ticket? Is like, I don't know. Would that be like 2 hours, 3 hours tops? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
did an episode with Randy on my show, and I flew a plane in Microsoft Flight Simulator over his property, so I got a really good view of it. Microsoft Flight Simulator uses satellite imagery and it reconstructs it in 3D. So I went over his property. I saw that the river's right next to him. I saw the highway, and yeah, I mean, I've done that for a few Bigfoot cases. And then every time I fly over an area with a Bigfoot sighting, the first thing I notice is there's an ocean of green. There's an ocean of trees. That's well, except for one case in Ohio, actually. It was a residential area, but even there was a little sliver of woods behind the house where it was seen in the suburbs. But the other areas, yeah, it's always. I guess what I'll say is areas with frequent UFO activity. It's always an ocean of green, which makes sense. And I think a lot of people, I think most people in America are concentrated, well, all over the world. Let me just say that they all live in cities, in big metropolitan areas. And so we're kind of ignorant of the wilderness in the world, the vast swaths of land, of ocean, of trees that are out there where nobody lives, where very few people live.
Half of my home county is like that, up almost to halfway to Nashville.
Right. That's
like
true.
if there's a Sasquatch out there, there's 150 of them. Like if they exist out there, and they probably vote in a local election. It's so remote.
It's true.
And there's so much wildlife. There's so much wildlife too around Randy's place. There's tons of deer. There's even a lot of bears. You can go out hiking and every day and never run into a bear, but yet he gets pictures of them on his trail cameras, so you know that there's a lot of them around. At night you hear coyotes howling in the distance, so it's definitely a wilderness area.
Now, is his the only place as revved up or as active as you've seen? Or have you been? I know you've been to other areas.
Well, he has a neighbor named Ron Shaw that lives a couple miles from him, and he says he has Bigfoot activity on his place too. As far as other areas around the state, I've never seen any place that has as heavily concentrated of activity as Randy's place. I mean, he's got stuff happening almost every day.
I mean, like in your research and experience, is any place, just in the world in general, as crazy as Randy's?
Yeah, well, you'll hear about other cases like his with recurring activity on a single piece of property, but they're kind of rare. They're not unknown, but they are kind of rare.
Oh yeah, well, that's to be expected.
Skinwalker Ranch is one of the more famous ones.
Which Randy did have some activity that reminded me of Skinwalker Ranch. I'm sure you're familiar with the incident where he locked himself out of his house and he had to come in, and then the ice cream bar was like melted on the table, and his bed and was covered in urine. That sounds very Skinwalker Ranch to me.
He's had sporadic stuff happen inside the house that make it seem like it's haunted. Things have gotten moved around. Apart from that ice cream bar, he came home once and found a stick of butter had been taken out of the refrigerator and stuck to the side of it.
Tell me about that.
His TV has been turned on and off by itself.
Yes.
He had one night where he was asleep and his bedroom door was locked, and all of a sudden he woke up and something was rattling the doorknob like it was trying to get in, and he had a gun beside the bed and he tried to reach for it and he found that he was paralyzed, like he was having sleep paralysis. Now that stuff doesn't go on all the time, but just once in a while stuff will happen inside the house that seems like poltergeist type activity.
Right.
Do you know when he was telling us about those particular instances, it sounded almost like remember I compared it to the Grizzly Man, how it wasn't just his normal pack of the ones that lived around him, like it was a rogue agent that popped in, like another bear has entered the camp, or maybe it was like another type of elemental. that showed up through the same.
I think that's what it was.
the
I think
same
that's what it
means.
was. I wonder if because the big okay, let's just go with this idea. I know there's no evidence for it, but I'm just trying to go with it. Let's say that Bigfoot was gifted, and I'm not saying this is happening currently. I'm saying maybe this happened, decades ago. But Bigfoot as a species was gifted technology by the UFOs because the UFOs liked what they were doing and they wanted to give them a heads up or a leg up. Could it be that just like when we use nuclear power, a consequence of that is that it attracts UFOs? They don't seem to be connected directly, but that type of technology attracts them. Could it be that when you use that type of technology, like portal technology, invisibility technology, it also attracts other weird things, like Bobby was saying, like a nature spirit or who knows, a shadow person, some kind of weird things. That could just be a consequence of them using that technology. Is that
there's like a thin place in the veil, as we call it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't really dismiss any theory out of hand at this point.
Nope.
The other thing
that's the craziest part. Can't dismiss any of it.
The other thing I was going to say is that I from talking to Randy and other people, I've come to the conclusion that if like you said, your goal is to show that Bigfoot is real. I don't know. I really think in order for that to work, you have to have the cooperation of Bigfoot. I don't think maybe it could happen without the cooperation of Bigfoot, but it seems unlikely or very difficult because it hasn't happened yet. So I feel like it is possible to show that Bigfoot is real, but one of the prerequisites is you have to have the cooperation of Bigfoot. Bigfoot has to be in on it. And when I say Bigfoot, I mean collectively, whoever you're dealing with, not just one specific Bigfoot. The other thing is that your intentions have to be clear. They have to be good. So a prerequisite of getting their cooperation is your intentions have to be clear. So your intentions, I'm not talking about you, Mike, I'm just saying in general, somebody who wants to show Bigfoot. Let's say a hunter with a gun. I don't think his intentions are good. His intentions are to kill Bigfoot, show him off, and probably, get some fame, notoriety, and money. Those type of intentions, I don't think they're not going to align with Bigfoot. If you go in with the intentions like, look, I want to show Bigfoot is real because I want to maybe help the world. The world can see there's more to the world. Maybe it'll help us be kinder because we realize we're a smaller piece of a puzzle. Maybe showing that Bigfoot is real will also help with its conservation and long-term survival of its habitats. If you come in with those intentions and then somehow you get Bigfoot to go in and agree to help you, I think that's how it'll happen. Just based on what I've seen.
That reminds me of a conversation I had with some Native Americans down in the Red Wing, Minnesota area back in around 1990.
Okay.
We were talking about the Patterson-Gimlin film, and their belief was that Bigfoot allowed a white man to shoot that film of one to show that the Indians weren't lying about their existence. I can't confirm or deny that, but that's what they thought. It made me wonder if that's true. Will there come a day when Bigfoot allows even more than a film of that quality, to be captured? Like, would they allow one of their number to give up its life to prove that the species exists?
Right.
I wonder if that'll happen someday.
Well, see, that's one of my plans for how to show Bigfoot is real is to have a body, because you're absolutely right. But here's the thing. I don't think they have to, give up their lives. Like I said, I think they die. I think they die natural causes or of an accident. So I wouldn't ask for a sacrifice. I would just wait. I don't care if it takes 50 years. I don't care. You'd be proving Bigfoot is real. That's one of the biggest discoveries the world has ever known. But anyway, I would just wait. I'd be like, hey guys, when one of you dies of natural causes, just give me the skull, and I'll protect the body. I'll treat it with respect. But yeah. I'm right with you. I just don't think they have. I don't think they have to kill themselves, and you don't have to kill one. I think you just have to wait for one of their bodies to, one of them to die naturally.
Well, there's a very small number of reports of hunters shooting them and killing them, and then when they get a close look at the body, it looks so human. They're afraid they're going to get in trouble, so they leave it there, or of them being hit by logging trucks and killed that way, or presumably killed that way, or even of people just finding dead bodies in the woods and not really knowing what to do about it, and then losing track of where the exact spot was and they can't find it again. There's just a handful of stories like that from over the years. I don't know of any recent ones, but yeah, I wish something like that would happen.
Well,
again,
going with the what they look so human idea, going with that idea.
Mhm.
Look, I think you're right. Yeah, they probably do look incredibly human. Also, I wonder. Okay, because look, humans, me and you, current day humans, we have a mixture of different human species DNA. We have some Neanderthal DNA in there, different species. So we're a mix of all these other species. What does that mean? It means we could in the past we could interbreed with them. So I wonder, are we closely enough related to Bigfoot that we could interbreed with them? Some of the stories are out there, but okay, what I'm saying is, if we are that closely related that we could interbreed with them, then it would be like killing another human, and then there's a lot of significant ethical questions come into place. Because yeah, if you're close enough with an animal to breed with it, you're basically the same species, very close to, not exactly, but you're very close to the same species, basically. Yeah.
there are some old Indian stories just from legend about interbreeding.
Right.
But again, I don't know of anything recent
Mhm.
that talks about anything like that.
There was that
Mike,
one from Russia, like 100 years
right.
ago. Did I
I
dream
heard
that?
about that.
Like I had in a cage or something. It was a half Bigfoot, half human child.
It was a woman, yeah, and then the woman had children, and then someone tracked down some of her children, and
Yeah.
I think they might have done a DNA test on her. But Mike, I was going to ask you, like, is it correct? What because I'm thinking that the Native Americans have a mixed history with the Bigfoot creature, because I think I remember them having wars with them. Like they were a lot of times at conflict with them. It wasn't always a peaceful, you know, co-living situation. Is that true, Mike?
Yeah, there's an interesting mix of reactions from different native tribes and how they feel about them. Sometimes they, like the ones down by Red Wing, they were calling Bigfoot their big brother and their protector, and that it would show up at times of adversity to kind of give them strength. But then I remember back in the late 70s, I think it was, on a reservation on the border of North and South Dakota, there was a long string of sightings that went on for a few months there, and those people were absolutely terrified of what was going on. They were going out with guns and trying to kill the things.
I just wonder why stories like that get squashed. Because you would think it'd be a big deal if it happened. And it has to happen more than we know, especially now. Social media and whatnot.
It's interesting. Well, Bobby, I was going to mention to you, Bobby, but I'll mention it to you, Mike. There's this video. Okay, Bobby, you were talking about, like, I remember one time we were talking about this UFO video from Mexico City where this UFO came out of the a volcano, and that's in the episode on my channel called Myths, Magic, and Monsters of Mexico. But anyway,
with Robert
Bitto from Mexico Unexplained. And Bobby, you made the comment like, I don't understand how that video can come out and nothing happens in the world. The world doesn't change. That's not what everybody's talking about. Well, very recently, yesterday, I saw a brand new video by Jaime Massad, who's a Mexican journalist. And I want to share, I'll share the link with both Mike and with Bobby if you guys are interested in UFOs, Mike. But this video, dude, it has some of the clearest UFO videos you've ever seen, and a lot of them, and they're all from this year. What I'm saying is that he has a daily newscast in Mexico. It's for 5 minutes, and that's what he does, is he shows these UFO videos. Yet I'm just finding out about it, you know. So I guess I'm saying is that, you know, information has a weird way of not spreading sometimes, you know, because like those, you'll see those UFO videos when I send you that link. They are clear. You see the saucers from different angles, multiple videos over and over again. It doesn't stop. It's like 2 hours long, and I'm just hearing about it. So I don't know. Sometimes information has a way of getting stuck or not spreading, I think.
It's almost like we're as a hive mind that we ignore that stuff for some kind of evolutionary reason.
Yeah,
like it never spreads.
Even if people do hear about it, the attitude these days is, well, you can fake anything on film. Now, you know, people just, even if it's crystal clear, people just assume that it's fake. And I'm sure the same thing would happen with a Bigfoot video that was as good as Patterson-Gimlin or even better. People would still say that it's fake.
We have decades of programming to tell us to ridicule this subject. That's the other thing. just about America. I don't know about the other parts of the world, but in America, there's been a campaign that's decades long to ridicule any paranormal subject. So perhaps we have to overcome that, or people like us. I think we have already overcome that. But the average Joe or average Jane or whatever, they have that in them. I think that it's a barrier.
It's a defense mechanism. I think a lot of people just can't step past it, or maybe they don't want to be seen as crazy. I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody sees me as crazy anyway, so I don't think it's not something I have to really squash, as long as I'm not seen as like dangerous, I guess. Crazy and not dangerous is fine. That's just humorous.
And I wonder. I doubt this will happen, but I wonder if anybody will ever come up with a way of capturing Bigfoot alive. People talk about using tranquilizer guns, but that's not something that just anybody can get a hold of. You need special permission to even own one of those, and you also need to know the approximate weight of what you're going after to know how much drug to use. And if you don't use enough, you're not going to knock it out. And if you use too much, you're going to kill it. And a tranquilizer gun is a pretty close range weapon too. You have to be very close to what you're shooting at. So
the other thing is that go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and I think they're too smart to ever lure them into a cage and catch them that way.
Yeah, that would be, and even if you could, they could orb out of there.
If they can do that.
The other thing is that they're incredibly dangerous. I feel like if a Bigfoot wanted to kill you and it was like 100 feet away from you, maybe within a minute you'd be dead if it wanted to kill you. Like within a minute, it would just hop over and just snap your neck. Game over.
It's got to run faster than a bear.
Yeah.
It's probably
the amount of activity that's gone on at Randy's place, there's so many witnesses and things that have happened at very close range. I think if they had any violent intentions, somebody would have been hurt or killed by now.
Yeah. You know they don't want to.
What I was saying is if you wanted to tranquilize one, that would, I think, instigate one to kill you, perhaps. Because they don't. How would they know that's a tranquilizer? That would probably be viewed as a hostile threat to their life. That's what I mean. I know Randy didn't do anything like that, but I was just saying that I think that's another barrier to capturing one alive, is that they would view that as a threat and they could kill you. One of them could kill you within a minute. Two of them, I don't know, 30 seconds.
And was it Randy that told us that somebody told him to quit carrying a rifle in the woods, carry a revolver in the small of his back, and he'd have more sightings? Somebody told Randy that. Might have been Mike.
Yeah, he carries a revolver mostly in case he runs into a bear.
Mm-hmm. I think Doug Hychek told him that, to be honest.
Yeah, and I've had conversations with Randy about how he feels about shooting one to prove that they exist. And he said even if he got the chance, he would never do it unless it was in self-defense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's not the way to do it. That's like proving a deciduous indigenous tribe exists on an island. It's just, it doesn't mean like I want Bigfoot to exist more than I want at least one of my children to succeed in college. I'm just saying it's a big deal. Like if I could trade one of my kids dropping out of college knowing Bigfoot exists, I would take that deal right freaking now. I mean, take it. You take that deal? Damn fine deal. I would take it today.
Hey, there's a lot of trade schools. There's a lot of trades people out there.
I'm just saying. Yeah, I mean, she can start a podcast. YouTube pays well these days, 15 cents a minute. But I just don't think that killing one is not the answer. It's shooting one, nothing. No. Maybe by accident, maybe one breaks into a house and maybe Bigfoot's drunk on alien juice. Maybe Bigfoot does drugs and is like a methed out Bigfoot. This is just me thinking out loud and breaks into a trailer and gets popped. But other than that, I don't think I don't want to see one shot. Oh,
yeah.
We have a suggestion from the audience, Mike. Hit it with a sound wave. Bigfoot Havana syndrome.
That's funny.
Like the military has. Well, I don't think that's something that your ordinary civilian can get a hold of either.
I was going to say
that the military's already done it.
I was going to say I don't know how real that technology is, but just a funny little side anecdote is that if you read the sequel to Jurassic Park, the novel, the novel is called The Lost World. Well, in that novel, it's a lot different than the movie, but in that novel, Lewis Dodson, the main guy from Dominion, and he had a small scene in the first movie. Anyway, in that book, what he does, him and a small team, very small team, they go to the island, Isla Sorna, with the dinosaurs, and they steal eggs. But the way they steal eggs is with this: they have a gun that shoots sound waves. So they go to the T-Rex nest, the Stegosaurus nest, they point the sound wave gun, and then they take the eggs. They eventually get eaten by raptors, though. So
was that the book where he was on a bicycle?
Yeah, there was a motorcycle. There's a really good motorcycle scene in that in that book. Yes.
And Sarah Harding was swimming. Yeah, I've read it.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the shows from the UK. I don't know what time it is over there. Maybe 3
let's
or
go.
something.
Let's go to the comments real quick.
Sure.
We got some favorites in here we can't ignore. We got Sarah from My Flock is Everywhere. Sup, Bobby? She ignored wild trees on purpose. Don't think they didn't go unnoticed. Long Island Bigfoot says, "Good to see you feeling better."
Oh, thank you. Well, Long Island Bigfoot. Yes, I do feel better.
We got our buddy John P. He's in
John
Portugal.
P.
Portugal?
Yeah, he's in Portugal. Yeah, so he usually pops in to say hi, and then he goes to sleep, and he sees it the next day because it is, once again, I think it's like 3 or 4 in the morning in Portugal.
My man was with you for 3 hours the other night, though. He
was
must have been on some Ritalin or something. We got Orbital and
hey, John,
that's wreaking havoc.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for being here, John.
He offered some. He believes Bigfoot's a dimensional being. Thinks there's something in the woods that might not be available where they are from. Let me jump off of that comment real quick, Mike. What's the deal with the peanut butter? And this is not, it's not a joke for me. It's he said it's 1:45 a.m. But it's something that's crazy to me because when you look at Bigfoot, if you take columns, you know how you take columns and put pros and cons of something. This isn't pros and cons, but just qualities of Bigfoot. You know, smart, ethical, intention based, can interdimensional travel. This is just going with what may or may not be possible. Can hop in and out, can float into an orb. The other one can't open peanut butter jar. Like what? I just wonder what their fascination is. How come their mind goes straight to primitive when it comes to peanut butter? They turn back into an animal. That fascinates me. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, but it just tells me they may be an animal, just like a silverback gorilla pack would come into your yard if you were in Africa. Like they may be an animal that travels through that portal just on accident, like a coon travels through a creek. Like what's your opinion on their peanut butter? Like how come they can go that primitive and still be what they are? Do you think? Or if you've ever thought about that? It does seem
kind of animal-like to be attracted to peanut butter, but then when they have the dexterity to unscrew the lid from a jar and then stick 2 fingers in, take a bite of it, and then they screw the lid back onto the jar and put the jar back onto the tree where they find it. That's what surprised me the most. I remember being at Randy's one of the first times that finger marks were found in peanut butter, and when I was shown that these two, fingers are like 2 or 3 times the width of human fingers, but that's clearly what it was. These 2 giant holes pressed down into this peanut butter. When I saw that, I was like, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me!" And when they said that the lid had been put back on the jar and the jar placed back on the tree, I was just like, "That's amazing."
I think that's some of the most compelling Bigfoot evidence that exists on planet Earth, and it's just by the wayside that it's just a jar of peanut butter. I'm like, they literally opened that thing and put it back.
Yeah,
and they love it, and they'll come here for the peanut butter.
And a few months ago, I had the idea of trying to trick them by putting a trail camera inside of a plastic tote and putting some jar of peanut butter on top and another jar inside with the camera, and to try to entice them to take the lid off to see what was inside so that the camera would go off. But when I first got there, I put all of my gear at the site I was going to be camping at, and I had the peanut butter in a cooler. I wasn't ready to set up my little experiment yet. And when I was ready and I went and got it, I took the peanut butter out of my cooler and took the lid off so I could peel the paper off of the top of the jar. And I found that something had already beaten me to it and punched through that paper and taken there was a finger mark in the peanut butter. There, a scoop had been taken out. So whatever did that had gone into my cooler.
Wow.
Just to see what was in it while I was away. I was sitting like 100 yards away at the.
Oh yeah.
Randy has this firing area, and me and some other people were sitting there about 100 yards from my campsite when this happened, and nobody saw anything or heard anything. And this was in the middle of the day.
Randy did mention something about that before, the cooler that was open.
Yeah, and I had a can of Spam in the cooler too that I had already made a sandwich from it. So I had peeled the lid off of the can of Spam, and I just left that lid in the cooler. And I found that lid about 20 feet from the cooler on the ground, all rolled up. So it had taken that out too.
Dang.
And it put my peanut butter back in the
step out
cooler,
for
but
just
it
a
threw
second.
the
Sorry about
Spam right
that.
on the ground.
Carry the convo for me, Wild Trees. Give me 30.
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so yeah, they took out the. Okay, so you're saying they're very courteous. They took like just a little finger scoop full of peanut butter, and then they put the lid back on. They put it back in there, and then they took your Spam lid, and you said they folded it up and put it aside. Is that correct?
It was kind of rolled up.
Rolled up, yeah.
And I have that Spam lid preserved in my freezer now, just in case it was licked or something. So maybe I can get that analyzed at some point.
Well, I like the way you think with your scientific mind and your design of experiments. This is the experiment I thought of for Randy to do. So this is an experiment to get hair. But, you know, sometimes Randy gets hair, people get hair, but the problem is we're not sure where it came from. You know, perhaps we suspect highly it's Bigfoot. So this experiment would be to make sure it is Bigfoot hair. So all I said was like, look, let's do this, Randy, is let's get a cardboard box, you know, with an open top. And then at the bottom, let's put the peanut butter jar. Just do that once. And just to get Bigfoot used to this idea of reaching in this box, getting the peanut butter. Once that's successful, then all we do is on the top of the cardboard box that's open, we put a bunch of double-sided duct tape all over it, okay? Which is very sticky. And so the Bigfoot will have to pass through this gauntlet of duct tape to get the peanut butter and then pull out. And then the hair will get stuck on the tape. And then there we go. We know that's Bigfoot. I talked to Randy about that. Now he was hesitant to do it because I think he told me that he viewed it as a betrayal, perhaps. He wasn't sure how Bigfoot would take that type of thing on his property. He said he might do it on some other property, like the state land, but he didn't want to do it on his own land.
I was going to mention that when he brought up the cooler thing.
Yeah.
With the tote.
Well, he's gotten hair samples on tape like that. He's in the power line corridor. There's this transformer box where he puts all kinds of little items on that box to try and entice him. And sometimes he finds the stuff moved around, and he put strips of tape on there, and he got long reddish brown hair stuck to the tape that's the same color as one of the creatures that he has seen.
Oh, when was this?
It's been within the past couple of years.
Okay, interesting.
He mentioned something like that because the transformer box.
Yeah,
I'm just talking about. Long hair.
He's got a lot of hair samples preserved, and Doug Hychek is he's supposed to be working on a new documentary soon. He did this show on the Discovery Channel called Sasquatch Legend Meets Science, and he wants to do a part 2 to that. And it's going to have a segment about Randy's place. And when he gets around to filming that, he says he's going to have all of the hair samples that have been collected analyzed for DNA and announce the results as part of the show.
Okay.
But I guess he's still working on getting that funded. But
see, the other thing, if I had hair, and I've asked some Bigfoot witnesses for hair that they have them, they're very hesitant. I'm going to be charitable, and I'm going to say it's because they don't know me very well and they don't trust me, which makes sense. I mean, I'd have to maybe, gain their trust and, put in some commitment. But anyway, if I did get what I thought was Bigfoot hair, I would not do DNA testing because I think that's been done before. Just my personal, and also DNA technology, I'm sorry, it's still very touch and go. It's not that great. What I would do with it, though, is I would do a scanning electron microscopy on it. So I would magnify it to a tremendous amount because there are guides out there that are made for this purpose. You can tell a lot. You can identify animals based on the microscopic structure of the hair. And I haven't heard of anybody doing that. I always hear DNA. Because what if the DNA comes back as human, which is possible, because what if they are very closely to human? Then you're just at a dead end. You're like, okay, it's human. It sounds a little bit anticlimactic to me. But I don't know. I wonder, I think scanning an electron, the structure of the hair might have more secrets in it than the DNA of the hair. And it's cheaper and it's faster. And it's more reliable. It's 100% reliable. I mean, we've been using scanning electron microscopes for, I don't know, decades. So that's my personal opinion. I mean, I took a class in graduate school on scanning electron microscopes. Maybe that's why I've used them a lot. So and I've never used DNA technology. So maybe that's why I'm biased, but that's what I would do.
I've never thought about the hairs actually being human, and that's why they never pop up. I mean, a lot of people think that they're just another variety of person.
Yeah.
I've heard that more than once. It's entirely possible.
Just like, Mike was saying that story about some people might have killed one, and when they look at it, they're like, oh my God, it's just like a person. What have I done? I don't want to tell anybody.
Or they find a skull in the woods and it's just a person.
Yeah.
How they know it's not just a missing person.
Some dude just died here. Some big guy died here. Well, yeah.
Well, I've heard of cases where hair has been analyzed and the results have said this is from a higher primate, but doesn't match any known higher primate. So
okay.
I guess I would hope for a result like that.
Yeah, and that would seem more. I would like to know. I would like to see like an obvious statement. I'd like to see a picture of one that would show their face. I mean, we got obvious blurs, and Randy's got his game camera pictures, but right now they just look like a really hairy, slightly more erect gorilla.
Mm-hmm.
Especially that backbone picture Randy got that's on his homepage. That thing's amazing.
There was a picture taken just a few months ago in August. I was there, and a couple of Native American guys were visiting the property, and we were out quite a ways into the state land, and one of those guys kept, every now and then he would take his phone and take a picture over his shoulder in case something was behind us. And he did get this one shot of what looks like a face looking through the brush at us, and it's only a couple of yards away, and none of us saw anything or heard anything. It's not a real, there's tree branches in the way, you're seeing it through the brush, but it does look like a face looking out at us, like an ape-like face.
Interesting. I'd love to see that.
Have you heard Randy's report of I say his report, his statue of what he says the face looks like?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah. He showed it. He showed it to us. He's got that statue in his house. I asked him what the face looked like, and we thought he was going to pull a head out of a freezer or something. And he brought out that little statue about that tall.
Yeah,
he said they look like that.
His wife, Terry, had her first sighting not too long ago, just a few months ago.
Right.
And when she was on her way home from work, she was approaching the driveway, and this Bigfoot was in the road, crouched down, and it didn't run when her car got close to it. It just stayed right where it was, and her car passed within a couple of feet of it. And she ran in a house and told Randy what she had seen, and she was saying, it looks just like the statue. So
do you think she'd be willing to come on? You think you think she's open enough to? I'm asking you, like you got her, like what I see what kind of person she was. I didn't want to like insult Randy by saying, hey, can we talk to your wife?
I think you'd have to ask them about that, but she doesn't really like the spotlight. She mostly stays out of it, and I've talked to her a little bit, and she just says, I'm content to let Randy do whatever he wants, and even to have people come and check the place out, but I stay out of it, and I don't even go out in the woods. That's what she says.
Sounds like the best policy yet. Can't imagine driving down the road, seeing a Bigfoot right there next to it. Just keep driving.
Yeah, she's had the one sighting, but she's heard them a lot too, because there's all kinds of sounds that they make. Early on, way back in 2014, her and Randy heard one at 4 a.m. right outside of their bedroom window, and it was doing what people call samurai chatter. It's
Right.
the name
Mhm.
that's been given to what people think is their language because it sounds kind of vaguely Asian or like somebody trying to imitate an Oriental language.
Yes.
That was the Sierra Sounds he heard.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was
And
he
I've
did the
even,
impression.
He did a good one too.
yeah. And I've even heard sounds there that sound like them mimicking human voices. I haven't heard the samurai chatter, but one night I was out there by the fire ring by myself until 4 in the morning or so. And a couple times during that night, I heard what sounded like a couple of people out in the woods calling to each other, and I couldn't make out the words, and it was just for a few seconds. But I told Randy in the morning, he said, well, there was nobody out there. So what did I hear? We think they can mimic human voices and animal sounds. There's even been like horse whinnying type sounds. And Randy has one of his daughters lives just a quarter mile up the road, and she has horses. And he's called her, and when he's heard these sounds and said, are you missing any of your horses? Did any get out? And she said, no, they're all here. So we think they can mimic just about any sound that they hear.
Yeah.
Some people have even heard what sounds like little kids like laughing and playing out in the woods where there shouldn't be any such sounds, but Randy has grandkids that'll come over and be running around playing. So that's something the Bigfoots would hear and maybe be able to imitate.
He was the one that said he heard his name in the yard, wasn't it? He heard one
Yeah,
say his name.
One time when he was in the house was pounded on, and that's happened several times that the house had been pounded on. But this one time, right after he heard the pounding, he says he heard what sounded like a female voice just call out his name. And he couldn't be sure if he heard that with his ears or if it was in his mind, like telepathically.
Right.
He wasn't sure.
Has he ever had the dreams? We've heard a lot of witnesses have dreams when they're near them a lot.
I'd have to ask him about that. It's not something he's.
Maybe we should just ask Randy. Get Randy back. I'm asking you. Yeah, one guy we talked to from Missouri said he would have dreams and the Sasquatch would appear to him there. And then he would see a Sasquatch in a dream that would appear as a woman, and that I still don't understand how that worked. I think that was where I made the Mars Attack reference. How Sasquatch is dressed up like the alien, but
Right.
that would have been a part of the telepathic.
Right.
The mind speak kind of thing.
All I know for sure is I want to befriend a Bigfoot. I think it's possible. I think it'd be cool. You know, it's not that crazy either because like I'm pretty sure I befriended a great blue heron. I've told this story before, but a great blue heron is this water bird, and so I was walking around my neighborhood last December and I saw a great blue heron just in the middle of the road, you know, by a stop sign. I was like, "What are you doing? Why aren't you in the creek or whatever?" Anyway, I kept walking, you know, all those months. And I would constantly see it, and it would like fly in front of me, like it wanted me to see it. It would follow me, and eventually it got to the point where it was waiting for me in front of my house. I mean, I don't think it wanted to eat me or anything. I'm not in his diet. I think I befriended or we became friends. It's not here anymore. I think it might have flown away for the winter. I don't know. I should look it up. But anyway, I'm saying if you could befriend a great blue heron, why couldn't you befriend a primate? It sounds a lot easier or less crazy.
Yeah, Randy likes to think that he has kind of made friends with them and gotten them to trust him. So that's why he doesn't like to do anything to try and trick them anymore, like he was first doing.
Yeah, he can definitely get them to do things on command. He shut this podcast down twice just by saying something about it. That was freaky.
Yeah.
When he turned the whole thing off from his end that one night.
Right.
It's like, hey guys, if you're here, do something to the show. And that sucker dropped. Never dropped before.
Right.
Never been more uncomfortable.
And in May of 2020, when the SRA was going to be visiting, and I was there too, I guess a couple days before, Randy went out in the woods, and he says he feels goofy every time he talks to him, but he still does it. And he said, hey, you guys, I've got some friends coming and they're all okay. They just want to learn about you. So why don't you make sure and give them a good show?
Mm-hmm.
And turns out that's exactly what happened, because everybody that was there that weekend either saw something or heard something.
Absolutely.
What's the when you talk about Randy's place? What's the sighting that you lead what would be the selling point sighting for you, like the elevator speech sighting?
I don't know if there's been one sighting that I would call the best one. I think it's
like
more,
a typical kind of sighting, I should say. What would you expect?
The series of sightings that Randy's had in the power line corridor, where he's had 3 sightings of 2 different creatures in almost the exact same spot, standing next to the same power pole 3 times.
I just mean just in your experience. Is it just the one you told me about earlier?
I haven't had any sightings there myself yet. The closest encounter that I had was that same weekend in May of 2020. I was staying in Randy's guest trailer. This was at the end of the night at about 3 a.m, and I was just about to go to bed. And I'd been hearing whoops and tree knocks and things like that all night. But just as I was laying out my sleeping bag on the floor, there was this slight little scrape along the outside of the wall of the trailer. And it was so soft, it didn't really even startle me. I just kind of went, what the heck was that? And I went and I looked out the nearest window and I didn't see anything. And I should have gone outside and looked around, but I didn't, just because I was tired, and I just went to bed. And when me and Randy went and looked back there in the morning, there were these white finger marks along the outside of the wall for about 3 feet. There was 7 of them. It looked like 4 fingers from one hand and 3 from the other, and the hands were the size of baseball gloves. So it seemed to me that a Bigfoot was about 8 feet away from me with just a wall in between.
Well, that's an experience. You don't have to see it. That's an experience.
Yeah. And, you know, the biggest one that's been seen there is described as being 10 feet tall. And if that's what it was, something that size could have just come right through that wall. It could have ripped that trailer apart if it wanted to, but it just came by and ran its hands along the wall for a second, just like to give me a little heads up or whatever. I'll never know what the meaning of it was, but it seemed like a personal message to me, like, hey, here I am. Just wanted to give you a shout out or whatever.
What do you think that white stuff is? He's got that all over his place.
Yeah, he's got it on his house and on trail cameras that they've grabbed, and like there'll be a camera on a tree that gets turned sideways around the tree, and white fingerprints are left on it. He thinks it's just some substance that they have on their skin.
I would love to have that examined, but he says it doesn't come off. Like like paint.
Yeah, I think he's got a camera. I think one of his cameras still has the fingerprints on it. The marks on the wall of the trailer did eventually wear off.
I'd like to know if anybody else that has this kind of experience has those same white marks on anything. That's the only place I've ever heard of that before. Of course, I haven't asked anyone.
There was another experience I had there where I was trying kind of an experiment to try and get them to step in front of a camera. It's where I put sections of mirror in some trees and also hung some CDs in the trees because they're shiny. And I had my trail camera pointed at one of the mirrors, and eventually, well, the next time I came there to check the site, Randy said, well, something happened there, but you're not going to like it. And when he showed me, all of my mirrors had been knocked to the ground, and one of them, the one that the camera was pointed straight at, looked like it had been stomped on because it was shattered completely. And the camera that was pointed at it had been turned sideways on the tree, and it had mud smeared all over it. And also one of the CDs was taken down from the tree that it was in and snapped in half and set right next to the shattered mirror. That doesn't happen by accident.
No, you don't snap a CD in half accident at all. You got to really.
if anybody's ever taken a CD and snapped it, you can do it, but it takes quite a lot of strength to.
That's what I was saying. It's not an accident. You gotta hold it away from you because it's gonna pop you back in the face.
Yeah.
And there lived in the AOL days. Does that?
There are stick structures now at that spot where I had the mirrors. For like 50 feet, there's just a whole series of them that were never there before. Just sticks that are arranged in ways that just don't seem like there's any way it could have happened naturally. I mean, it was such a long series that I couldn't even get it in one photograph. So the next time I go, I want to bring a sketch pad and try to draw it. It's a really just intricate series of just all kinds of designs fashioned out of tree branches. So it's something about that spot where I had the mirrors. I don't know if they're saying that they like what I did or if they don't like what I did. I think they either like me or hate me. I can't tell which it is. But it's
maybe
like
a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, it's like they wanted to commemorate what happened on that spot.
You go up there, you said a couple dozen times. Do you have like random, I don't want to say sightings, but like, do you like have random things happen when you're there every time, or is it just the once or twice?
I usually at least hear something, at least a wood knock or something that sounds like a human voice calling from off in the woods where I know that nobody is there. So the last time I was there, I was by the house and I heard from out about where Randy has his camping area and fire ring. I heard typical human sounding voice, but this one sounded female. And when I had heard that before, it always sounded male. So I'd always wondered if there's a baby one there, there's little 6-inch tracks have been found. That means there must be at least one female there that gave birth to it. Mm-hmm. And I've always wondered, would their voices, are they human-like enough that their voices would sound like male and female human voices?
Or it's like kind of like a parrot just has one voice for everything they do. I know the first time I heard someone tell me that their local Sasquatch population mimicked owls, like I almost ghosted the guy. And I'm glad that I didn't, because I talked to Randy and Randy told me the exact same story that guy did. I'm like, dude, I feel like a dick, because I was getting ready to tell that guy to piss off with his fake stuff. I'm like, Randy's telling me the same stuff is 1,000 miles away. I kind of sit here in my little chair, just kind of get a cold chill down my spine when Randy was telling me the same stuff.
I think they can mimic anything that they hear.
Mm-hmm. This guy sent me the tape of the owls, and I was like, dude, those are owls. I've heard owls. I grew up in the woods. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, Randy said the same thing. And coyotes.
And there's been what sounds like an elk call heard there too, and there's no elk in that area. So that makes me think they might have come from a part of the country at one time that does have elk, and they've heard them before.
Oh yeah, they may clip in and out. They can go up to Canada. Looks like Welcome to the Show has a solution, has a possible answer. Maybe the Sasquatch wanted to shave and appreciated the mirror. What is it?
I didn't seem to appreciate him too much if it threw them all on the ground and stomped on one of them.
The fact that it was stomped and the fact that the camera had mud on it, that's conscious. And it was on the tree still. Wasn't that what the story was?
The camera was still on the tree, yeah, but it had been turned sideways and smeared with mud.
That's not just a possum or an armadillo fooling around.
No,
that's intentional. And the CD being snapped, that might be classification point A. You can't just snap a CD.
No, that was definitely deliberate, and to be set down right next to the broken mirror, that was pretty impressive too.
Like, what now? Here we go. Welcome to the show. Mentioned it to Wild Trees, but I can't recall ever seeing a thermal image of a Sasquatch. I don't think I have either. I saw the thermal image of the portal on Skinwalker. That's not a Sasquatch.
That is curious. That is a good point, because if you were being followed by a Bigfoot, sure, they could hide from your regular camera, but the thermal cameras, should be able to pick them up. if I'm thinking about the technology correctly. But yeah, I can't think of any thermal. I wonder if they could regulate the temperature as well, or they could block the temperature from showing up on the thermal camera.
Maybe they don't have a temperature.
That's true.
I mean, we can't find the body, so who knows if they have homeostasis at all? They may just be energy.
There have been cases of thermal videos or photos. I don't have the details off the top of my head right now, but I know that there are a few of those out there.
I would think that they would exist somewhere. Surely somebody would do something. Of course, if they can detect a game camera, surely they can detect an IR camera or an infrared.
Yeah, I would think.
Here's talking about the Havana syndrome. Acoustic device temporarily incapacitates. God, I couldn't read that. Incapacitates the targets. Still, I think you'd have to get kind of close to that. That'd be like carrying a rifle. I couldn't imagine having the Luigi's Haunted Mansion gun on your back and getting close to one.
I still think that any antagonistic behavior against a Bigfoot is not the way to go. I think it's the equivalent of like a mouse going after Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's just not going to work very well.
They can definitely feel it. The bird that mimics chainsaws and car horns. That's a parrot. Oh. I really would like to know what happens to the bodies, because I don't know. Like, I mean, you say there's several reports of people finding them and everything, but it just seems like there was a population at all. There'd be one slip up to where there was like, maybe it does look like a human once it rots, but like there's a hairy dude dead. Maybe call an ambulance. I think they got a force ghost or something. Just disappear.
I think with the portal technology, I don't see why they just don't portal the body somewhere to the bottom of the ocean. Or...
That's what I was saying. Like maybe when one dies, it defaults back to pure energy.
Yeah.
I don't know. What in the world?
If it's not something like that, I think the most likely thing that happens to bodies is it's taken away by other ones.
Mm-hmm.
And there are, we think there's about a half a dozen of them on Randy's property, because he's seen two great big ones, one 9 feet tall and one 10 feet tall. And then Doug Hychek had these closed circuit TV cameras up for a while, and that you could tap into them and watch the live feed from wherever you were on your phone. And he was watching the feed from his home down in the Twin Cities one night, and he says he saw 3 Bigfoots walk in single file right in front of one of the cameras, and he didn't manage to get it recorded. I guess you have to hit a button to get it to record, and he was so shocked that he didn't hit the button. But he said those 3 were in the 6 to 8 foot tall range. So that makes 5, and then with the little 6-inch tracks, that makes a 6th one. So I think that's the minimum number of creatures that are on the property is a half a dozen.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, because there's got to be more than what you see, just to keep up the operations.
It sounds like perhaps that is the structure. So, all over North America, it sounds like there's maybe groups of 6, and that's how they are collected. Some animals have giant flocks, like birds, but it sounds like these creatures perhaps have a number of 6 or so as their population. Yeah.
And the big ones everybody sees like a sentry. Like that's the one out front doing the wood knock. Like hide your kids, hide your wives. Like no one ever sees the baby out front. It's always the 10-footer.
Right. Yeah, the sentry, the lookout. Yeah,
I've heard of babies being seen occasionally, but it's rare.
Yeah.
There have even been females seen carrying babies.
Who'd we talk to that saw the baby not too long ago? Might have been Long Island Bigfoot. He's got a hell of a story that I think is being untapped. He can make him appear in front of himself or make him do things just like Randy does. He's like one or 2 notches above Randy's ability of communication. But he doesn't have on his property. He can just go out to the national forest and whatnot, local woodlands, and experiences them there. And he did see the orbs. Because when we mentioned orbs, he goes, "Oh, you know about that?" I'm like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
pretty experienced researcher." Got some wood time. The lyrebird mimics chainsaws.
Ah, lyrebird.
I was thinking magpie, but that's not it.
Interesting. Yeah, I was going to say, going back to the big peanut butter thing. I mean, maybe it means nothing, but North American wildlife does love peanut butter because I used to be an animal trapper, so peanut butter was one of the most common baits I would use to trap animals. So
Yeah, the first time Randy put out peanut butter, it was just an idea that he had. He goes away in the winter for a job for a few months every year, and before he left, he took the jar off a full jar of peanut butter and he stuck the open jar onto a branch upside down.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came home a few months later, he found that the jar was still on the branch, but it was completely empty and completely cleaned out. I mean, like it had been washed and then put back on the branch. That's how thoroughly it was emptied. And so after that, he kept on putting out jar after jar of peanut butter, and it's probably been a couple of 100 jars by now.
Yeah.
Didn't one time we estimated how much money Randy spent on peanut butter? Did I dream that? Or did I do that to myself when I was driving or
We're
something?
talking about it. I mean, if you average like $3 per jar and you got
those things are expensive now. Peanut butter ain't no shit, man.
Gone up, yeah.
Especially if you get the good stuff like the natural that you got to stir up, like government peanut butter. It's like buying a gallon of gas. And Randy's got the one picture that I liked the most about his was the peanut butter and all the jar lids were lined up according to color.
Yeah, that's another thing they did. Sometimes they don't put the lid back on. They'll take the jar will disappear, but the lids will be left on the ground. And they're putting all the red ones together and all the yellow ones together and all the blue ones together. So I guess, a lot of animals are thought to be colorblind, but apparently they can see color and it means something to them.
Mm.
Yeah, that's one of the eeriest ones he's posted because it's clear what happened. Like it looks like somebody playing checkers at Cracker Barrel the way they got them stacked up.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you hear about he told you about this and not he? I know you've heard about it, but him with the airplane that flew over his spot. What was that story?
Yeah.
He said he had GPS coordinates about that time an airplane flew over. That's the scariest story he's told me, or he's told us. I'm like, that's the creepiest thing. I told him, I said, you could have gone all day without telling me that. That means somebody's listening.
Yeah, he was in a spot where a sighting had just happened a day or two earlier, where a couple guys were out sitting around the fire, but a couple guys got up and decided to take a walk around, and they were walking along a fence line, and all of a sudden a Bigfoot came running out of the trees and leaped over the fence just a few yards in front of them, and then ran back into another patch of woods. And then a couple of days later, Randy is at that spot where that happened when this plane flew over and circled around, and he said it was low enough he was able to write down like the numbers or whatever were on the side of the plane. And
yeah, that's what it was.
Yep.
He thought it might be Doug Hychek doing some filming for his documentary, but it turned out it wasn't anything to do with that. So
it was a rented plane, wasn't it? It just went straight from the airport and then came back.
He investigated a little and he found out that somebody rented it at the Bemidji airport, but he was never able to figure out who it was.
And it came directly right over the coordinates he'd sent the day before. That's what it was. Oh my God, it's even worse now I'm thinking about it. So that just tells you there's something like underlying there's some kind of other force trying to get to it. Trying to like cover the tracks. No pun intended. I guess we're closing in. Have you ever seen any evidence of government knowledge of Bigfoot and or covering up of it since in your research?
I've talked to different like DNR people over the years, and there's a wide range of reaction to it. Some people laugh, just think it's nonsense. There was a forester up in the town of Northome named Harvey Cole, He's retired now, but when he was still working up there, he had some experiences of his own. He found Bigfoot tracks, and he was a big believer in them. One of my books has an interview with him in it. The last time I talked to any kind of DNR person or forest ranger was in Buffalo River State Park, which is not too far from where I live. I had heard that somebody had a sighting there, even though it's not a forested area at all. It's more like farm country, and there's just this state park along the river. And I had heard there was a sighting, so I went there to ask about it. And the ranger that I talked to, as soon as he heard the word Bigfoot, he kind of took a step back and he put his hands up and he said, "Whoa, DNR can't comment on that." So I don't know if that was an official policy of refusing to talk about it, or if that was just his own attitude towards it. But I don't know if there is an official policy on Bigfoot in government agencies, because I've found such a wide range of reaction to it. It doesn't seem like there is an official position.
Now that Mr. Cole you were talking about earlier, is that someone who would be willing to maybe come on here if we reached out to him to get that perspective?
Possibly. I'm not sure how old he is now. It's
oh, okay.
Back in like the late 70s, early 80s is when he had his experiences, I think.
Oh, okay. So he might be recent. Yeah, I may reach out to you about that. I would love to have that kind of thing.
There's a DNR office in North Ulm, and they'd probably have information on where he's at now.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine DNR looks at Sasquatch and cryptids like that as kind of like the Air Force looks at UFOs, like almost like I know speaking English. I'll talk about it, which doesn't make any sense unless they're in cahoots with the logging industry, something like that. Something like that's happened has to be the reason they don't want you to know about it, because otherwise it would just be something cool. Like, come over here, beware of the giant gorillas in the woods that eat your peanut butter out of a Yeti cooler that's strapped shut.
You got to believe the DNR's got to get reports made to them on a fairly regular basis. I've collected over 700 reports of Bigfoot in Minnesota alone, so a lot of witnesses have got to contact the Forest Service and make reports. And I know that there was one witness who lives in Bemidji who had a sighting up in the Red Lake area back in the late 70s, I think it was 76, I think. And he said he went to the DNR office in Bemidji to report it, and he said they didn't laugh at me, but they didn't really say whether they took it seriously either. They just kind of matter-of-factly wrote down what I said and said thank you, and that was that. But I know they do have sightings reported to them.
I would love to see that file. I think I've got 2 more Minnesota Bigfoot people coming on here this month, or at least in December. One of which was on the other Grizzly show. I didn't even know she'd been on there before. But they just commented on some of my posts like, "Hey, I saw something like that too." I'm like, "You want to come on here?" I'm like, "Yeah." Then I had one guy tell me he would, if he wanted to come on my show, but I had to buy a copy of his book and didn't have enough people. So I'm like, "Okay, well, guess you're not coming on here then." Like, well, not good enough for you now, buddy. All right. Well, Mike, it has been great. It's been about 90 minutes. I think I don't know if I told you an hour or not, but I wasn't going to stop you and start talking about some of that stuff. So my apologies. I'm not.
No, that's okay.
Conversation was going too good. I almost reached out to Randy and see if he wanted to be on tonight, but I knew he was traveling.
Yeah.
And it's tough enough to get him situated when he's at his house on his kitchen chair. I couldn't imagine it like a hotel.
Yeah, he said he wants to have me visit one time in December before he leaves for his job up north. So
up on the island.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens then.
What is north of Minnesota? It's just like White Walkers and
What's that?
And I said, what is north of Minnesota? Is there anything up there? Just the Great Wall, and White Walkers.
Manitoba.
Yeah. You got the crows looking out from Castle Black.
I've never been to Canada, believe it or not. Lived in Minnesota my whole life, and I've been within a couple miles of the border, but I've never crossed over it.
Can you even go up there anymore? Isn't it off limits? I'd like to go to Canada.
You need a passport, but
yeah,
you can go.
Heard they were doing the COVID thing pretty hot and heavy up there.
It might have been pretty limited during COVID. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right. We'll go ahead and wrap up, Mike. Thanks for being on. And I've got the book link to the Amazon link to your book in the description. So anybody still hanging on at this point can go down there.
It was nice meeting you, Mike, and I would also love to have you on my channel as well. That'd be great.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for having me tonight.
Yeah, this was amazing. Like, if I form a panel in the future, I will definitely get back with you. I'm basically just forming a Rolodex of people I can reach out to now.
Okay.
And once I figure out how to make good conversation and it's interesting, I'll have everybody back on. But this was pretty good. I really liked hearing the other side of the story from Randy's place, and by the other side of the story, I mean just the same story from a different person, because it's pretty concurrent. No holes in it at all. It was amazing. All right, we'll go ahead and end the live broadcast here, and thanks everybody for joining. Welcome to the show. Says great conversation. Thanks. Welcome to the show's obviously been drinking, because I'm not capable of such. Ending the broadcast in that.